Ali Dawson, the late great Ali Dawson, scored a goal that day, and I'm pretty sure we're already losing 2-0 when he scored. I know we lost the game 2-1 in the end up, so there's even less reason. It wasn't like it was early on in the game we're taking the lead. It wasn't an equaliser before we eventually lost a second goal. It was already 2-0 down. We're just pulling a goal back. So even less reason for my pals and I to be jumping up and doing, going crazy. We're falling up and down the terrace and hugging each other and screaming at the top of our voices. It didn't really make sense except for the fact that we were young. We were very young, and I was like 16, going to be 17 in a few months. My pals, the same kind of age, and we were in the hardcore bit, the most partisan part of the Rangers supports, except for the fact that it was all wee boys like ourselves. But what would be the Union Bears these days? And another reason we had to give it loud is because we're trying to taunt the St Mirren supporters, who were right next to us, except for the line of stewards and the line of police and the mesh metal fence going up to the roof on the old Love Street shed, and then another line of police, another line of stewards, and then just getting saved, just being saved. If you take a total doing after the likes of me, was the St Mirren supporters. The Love Street division was at the LSD. In those days, we're definitely well into the casual era anyway. I know I was wearing the baggy blue jeans, maybe the Samba, Adidas Samba. I don't know if I graduated yet to the Gazelle. I love my light blue Gazelle. I really love the trainers. I had Le Shark because I couldn't afford Lacoste. One of the black leather jackets. We were wearing the kind of leather bomber jackets. They weren't really bomber jackets because they were so baggy, so bulky, as was the style then. Hundreds of kind of buckles, hundreds of pockets on them. There's buckles in the pockets, but leather epaulets and stuff, wee kind of strap things coming off them. The very kind of proto Manchester scene. You saw the Scousers wearing them on Brookside, stuff like that. Very, very trendy. I absolutely had the Chrissy Waddle mullet, permed mullet at the back. So an absolute fashion icon, except for the fact I looked like about 2,000 other boys who were standing round about me. But we jumped up and down and we celebrated because it's just that sense of camaraderie and a bit of transgression in your. I'd left school by that point in time. I think my pals had as well. If there'd been any danger of the LSD getting to us, it's the only time I'm fast in my life is running away from a fight. I was more just kind of scouting around the casual scene like a coward, enjoying the fashion, but enjoying the camaraderie as well. Enough fights in my life just trying to get out of Ardrossan, just trying to walk the streets in Ardrossan of an evening. But it was just great to be with your pals, to be out the house, away from your parents, and just doing the things you do round about the football and at the football, just watching Rangers scoring, just being at the game. We still thought, even though that season I went to, I think I only missed 2 league games that season, and I think one of them was definitely Pittodrie on a school night. But Rangers struggling was kind of par for the course in those days. In fact, it was below par that season. I don't know if that was the last of the defeats. We certainly, I think we'd lost at Kilbowie to Clydebank the previous week, but there was a lot of defeats. A record number of defeats for Rangers, a record proportion of defeats for Rangers in a league campaign. But my pals and I, we just get back on the train at Gilmer Street, and instead of getting off at Salkits or Ardrossan, where we all stayed, just carried on to Largs, carried on to the end of the line, and we go off and no trouble in Lars, but we had lovely fun and met some lovely girls, and I got myself a girlfriend for a year. So it's not about the results. It's not about how Rangers go in the park. It's just about living that Rangers life, following your team, and one day a girl from the blind school will feel that you've got a lot of passion about you, and it'll work out well. How you doing, folks? This is your Fat Eck Celtic at Ibrox, last Old Firm game of the season, preview pods, which might not be the preview. I might do the preview pod later in the week if I do go down to York to see Gary Oldman in Craps last night. Well, I'm going to go down, but I don't know if I'll go down the Friday in Stein Hotel. We've got a hotel booked for the Friday night and the Saturday night, but I don't know. I want to get back up the road for the Old Firm game on Sunday, so I'm going to have to either leave on Saturday night straight after the play or get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to the hotel. And so I don't know if I bother staying. Might just drive down on the Saturday. Might not bother going on the Friday. So if I don't go down on the Friday, I'll probably do another quick preview pod before that. And really, all I want to do is talk about still the fallout from the draw at Paisley and Saturday just past, and just deal with the fact that it's one of those weird European midweeks that Rangers aren't involved. And this time it's no because we've, finished so high up in our group that we've managed to skip one of those trampy playoff rounds. It's because we're actually not in Europe anymore. I mean, it's only one midweek that we've missed out. It's only one European midweek that we've missed out, although I know the Europa League final and the Conference League final are actually midweek as well, so technically there's two more midweeks to go, but they have the Champions League final on a Saturday now, which I'm dead against. Preview pod coming to you in association with Jersnet. Check out Jersnet's latest pod. It was a Sunday night there, and it's still up on their YouTube channel. It's Brian hosting Stuart and Ross, and they were discussing all things Rangers in a really constructive and entertaining fashion, starting, of course, basing most of it around that 2-each draw with St Mirren in Paisley on Saturday. I'm sponsored by Jersnet, and I'm also sponsored by That Was The Year. That Was The Year. It's a new feature here on the Fat Egg podcast, and it's not just a bit of filler that I'm dragging in at this point of the season where Rangers are out of all competitions that they can possibly win, and in the league we can't go any higher and we can't go any lower. I've just decided, just by sheer chance, that what I'm like. I love my stats, I love my history, memorabilia everywhere. Got a decent memory when it comes to this kind of stuff, and these guys are only about the same age as me. I mean, that's what the demographic information YouTube gives me, tells me. So I'll just start doing a bit of that. Was the year. That was the year that wasn't. That was year. It's just a bit of well-earned fun, I think, is what we're going to get into here. I think there's definitely mileage in this. So we'll start with 1979. I know a lot of you guys, that might sound a bit far away for slightly younger guys there, but I know a lot of you are kind of in your mid to late 50s, into your 60s, the same as myself. So we'll start with 1979 for Rangers. 1979, I was 9 to 10 years old. Just actually moved house. In Ardrossan, I was staying in the bottom end in Ardrossan for as long as I could remember. I was just a kid at the time, obviously, but we moved to this new house up the top in Ardrossan, and it was bigger, obviously. A wee sister, so Mum and Dad were wanting us to sit. We only had the one bedroom in the old place, so it was time for us to get a new bedroom. But I hated the new place. No, I liked having my own bedroom. That was great, but I just didn't really kind of get. It probably gets back to that night with Mum and Dad's pals. They stayed quite close. They stayed up the top end of Droston as well, Michael and Warren, and they would come round. They had kids of their own at the same age as myself and my wee sister, and it was great. They'd come round and they'd bring their kids round, and Mum and Dad and their pals would sit and have drinks and what have you, and talk nonsense, and we'd play with the kids and all that. And there's always a bit of arguing, there's a bit of drinking about and that, but you never really bothered with the adults in the days. But I just remember this one Saturday night, it just get really, because Mum and Dad are really young when they had me and my sister, so they were still, my dad would barely be 30. My mum would still be late 20s, so it's just that kind of thing, because I don't have kids. You can have these stupid arguments and that when you don't have kids, and it doesn't really bother him, doesn't do any harm. You just wake up the next day and you just go, God, what was that all about? And you sort it out and you move on. Just, it's real life, it's what you go through. But my mum and dad did have kids. It was me and my sister, and Michael Mooney this one night they came round and they didn't bring their kids with them, so me and my sister just kind of were kicking about the living room and that, and then watching them getting drunker, and must have run out of peanuts. I don't know what, we ended up going to our bed. Must have been 1, 2 in the morning or something. That's what you like Mum and Dad having guests on, because you get to stay up late and all that. But we're in our bed now, Michael Morin left, and we could just hear them arguing. Hear Mum and Dad arguing, they just stuck in about each other. There was no violence then like that involved, but it's just, they was just saying stuff, and I'd never actually heard Mum and Dad swearing before, and I ended up running down to my sister's. She's scared and I'm scared, and I ended up running downstairs and just, what's happening? My mum was like, alright son, and she took me back upstairs, and my dad just kind of walked away from me and said, sorry son, Mum said, no, that was me, that was my fault, don't worry about that, and women always take the blame, don't they, and but it was her fault. It's quite scary, and my sister and I cried ourselves to sleep, and a month later, it was never mentioned again, but I remember that month I just was terrified every time my dad went for a pint, or I remember there being a kind of thing on the television. They had one of the drama things that was on the telly in the days, and it was a guy who was beating up his wife. And Mum and Dad weren't doing that kind of stuff, but it was just they were shouting at each other. This couple on the telly, and they were arguing. And she tries to run away from him. She runs down a fire escape, and the brick that was holding the door open, he picks it up and he throws it down, and it hits her right in the head. And that's what Mum and Dad are going to do to each other if they. And so Michael Mooney come in, and they had the kids with them this time. They come in about a month later, and as far as Mum and Dad were concerned, it was, they'd sorted everything out. They just had a bit too much to drink of a night and had a wee bit of a fight, but my sister and I were traumatised. And Michael Mooney come back, right, and I was like, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. They're going to fall out like that again. I'm though. It's wee, you know. And so the only thing I can do is I'm going to go to my bed. I think my sister did as well. Went to my bed, and the kids, Michael Mooney's kids were there, but we went, oh, we've got to go to bed. It's 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. We should be in our bed. And being polite, kids, we went and we said good night to Mum and Dad. Oh, good night. We're going to go to bed. Good night. You know, and like, what you got? What's up with your pals? What? But we went to bed, and then so Michael Mooney went away. I don't know, midnight or something. Next thing, Mum and Dad come upstairs. And like, you come downstairs. I take up at my bed and go down to the living room. The two of them are sitting and they're raging. And I just said, my wee dressing gown, a wee tartan kind of dressing gown thing, you know, it's big knot tied in it, and the light blue pyjamas, you know, with a wee navy pipe and navy kind of corduroy slipper things, and I had hair then, a big mopper, red hair, and it was all combed, and I'd brushed my wee teeth, you know, wee teeth that were just kind of coming through, something other ones had fallen out, and I was looking at the carpet, and the carpet was like a kind of, I always remember the wee spots in the carpet. Don't look at the carpet, I'm talking to you. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You know, what are you doing? Going to bed embarrassing us like that? Why are you going to bed? I thought a child, 10-year-old, should be going to their bed at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. I couldn't say, because I thought you were going to fight with each other. I thought you were going to fight, and I wanted to be asleep. I didn't want to hear it again, you know. And I just thought, well, if they're shouting at me, at least they'll know. Shouting at each other. And the Buggles with Video Killed the Radio Star. That was a big hit in 1979. Cheggers Plays Pop, Rent a Ghost, two of the most popular children's TV programmes in 79. Nationwide was Britain's favourite current affairs programme. And I think Rangers just missed out on having two consecutive trebles. We retained the League Cup, beating Aberdeen in the final at Hampden, and we beat Hibs after a second replay in the Scottish Cup final. But of course we lost our league title after an infamous game against Celtic at Parkhead, where there's lots of sendings off. We lost 4-2 late on in the season, but we got to the quarterfinals of the European Cup, unlucky to go out to 2-1 in aggregate to Cologne, with Tommy McLean scoring Rangers' only goal of the tie. 1979. So tune in next week for more of that. That was the year. That was the year, folks. If you've got any ideas a year, a Rangers year that you'd like to talk about, my name's Alec Anderson. Is it worth it? A new winter coat and shoes for the wife, and a bicycle on the boy's birthday. It's just a rumour that was spread around town by the women and children. Soon we'll be shipbuilding. There's no point in getting too downhearted. No point in getting too downhearted about what happened at the weekend there. But I would like to do my usual snagging list, as usual, with the pods, all the things I got wrong in the last pod, which was the post-match reaction pod to the St Mirren game. I didn't actually finish telling you my Craps last tape, the production of Craps last tape, that Gary Oldman's starring in. My wife got us tickets for that at Christmas, and I knew straight away that's going to be the last Old Firm game of the season at Ibrox. Thanks very much. Made me miss the same game last season, in the last Old Firm game at Ibrox, because we went earlier in the year, that you're going to make me do it again. So the whole point was, I'd started telling you basically all the stuff, all the way Rangers interfere with your holidays and other plans, but you make the effort, you ruin these holidays, you ruin these other plans just to keep watching Rangers. And I was getting to the point, I think, I'm going for a 100% attendance record, 100% home attendance this season. But should I bother? Should I bother leaving the hotel super early on the Sunday morning, or not even staying in the hotel on the Saturday night, just driving straight up for York overnight so I can make it there for the noon kick-off. Should it actually bother if Rangers aren't going to bother their ass? Also talking about Charlie Sheen being in Apocalypse Now, playing Willard in Apocalypse Now. Obviously, it was his dad, Martin Sheen. Just one of these things that happens to you generationally. I mean, Charlie Sheen's in Platoon, another famous Vietnam film, although Francis Ford Coppola Apocalypse Now kicks Oliver Stone's ass in anything, really, any kind of film they want to do. So sorry about that. I know we've got a lot of big film fans watch the pod, so many thanks to them for not piling on and pointing that out to me. But I also want to say a big thank you to. And I'm going to first of all, the other thing I forgot to mention was Andoni Goikoetxea. Andoni Goikoetxea, the butcher of Bilbao. I was correcting myself in the snagging list on the last pod. I was talking about how in the previous pod I had a bit of a go at Rangers for sending Patrick Stewart, the CEO, to the Pichichi. And it turned out it wasn't the Pichichi bus at all. It was the Zara bus, which I didn't even know existed. Athletic Club Bilbao, and it's at their training centre. John Gregg had left the bouquet of flowers in front of the Pichichi bus at the old San Mamés when we first played Athletic Club in Europe in 68, 69, something I'd always wondered about. And turned out it was Patrick Stewart and the chairman as well, and it was Andoni Goikoetxea that met them at the Butcher of Bilbao. He scored the first goal I ever saw, scored by a Basque, scored by... they scored against Scotland at Hampden 1984, second biggest crowd I've ever been to a game in Scotland. 1984, Scotland-Spain World Cup qualifier. Ken Dalglish scored his 30th goal for Scotland that night, his last goal for Scotland. We beat Spain 3-1, magnificent night, but Goikoetxea came out with 2-0 up at half-time through 2 goals from Maurice Johnston, who was a Celtic player at the time. Goikoetxea comes out and scores a header, downward header in the second half. Silence. No, but he's the guy that broke Maradona's ankle, and he received our chairman and CEO. And that's, you're saying the CEO and the chairman to lay a bouquet of flowers at the Zara bust. So I really was totally out of order with that and forgot to mention Andoni Goikoetxea Saturday. But I have to a big my main apology for my tone and everything I was saying at the weekend comes from a non. The best way of putting it is it's a non-Rangers fan, but a real, very loyal, faithful. Always very nice about the pod, always watching the pod, and that's Robert McCafferty. He got in touch, he took my references to Craps last tape, and he said, your season has been a dichotomy of light and dark. He wrote in the comments section under Saturday's pod, and he said, your season has been a dichotomy of light and dark, and he's referencing Beckett's work here, the staging of Craps last tape, and it's a perfect summary of our season. And also just a sign of how I try to surround myself with really class people, class subscribers, class followers on this pod, and they will cover up the fact that I'm thick as mince. Just look at the comment section, don't bother with my pod. But what Robert was alluding to quite correctly is something that the biggest snagging list item, the fact that I had gone from last Thursday's pod saying this team did fantastically in Europe, and Europe trumps anything you can do domestically. Getting to a quarter-final of European competition trumps anything you can do in Scotland. It's better than winning the league, and we should make sure we adore our players for doing that. Stick up for them. Always prioritise Europe. And I talked for 2 hours and 4 minutes about that, and then I cut instantly. And I really kind of... quite contrasting, almost monochromatic fashion, I cut to the black and white of St Mirren as well. On Saturday's pod, just giving it they're a bunch of charlatans, get rid of a lot of them, that's an absolute joke, sack everybody, including Barry, get rid of Barry, it's just not, and I just been completely and utterly caught up in the moment. That's why there are reaction pods. I've basically spent 2 hours 4 minutes last Thursday saying, doesn't matter the domestic stuff, doesn't matter that we've not won the league this season, let's not get overly concerned about that, let's make sure we praise this team for what they achieved in Europe. And then as soon as you actually see them chucking it as it, they're obviously not chucking it deliberately against St Mirren, they just couldn't get themselves going at times, a very poor performance, but I'm like, yeah, get rid of a lot of them, this is absolutely unacceptable. And I wasn't saying even Saturday night that Barry, it wasn't a case of Barry must go. I was saying that Barry shouldn't get the job. I've never said that he should get the job long term anyway. This interim interim period is long enough, and I think he's also the perfect man for this interim management of Rangers. But it's more a case of Barry must not be manager next season. But I mean, maybe Hearts having got rid of Neil Critchley, maybe they could take Barry and his team of Rangers. No, they're his team of Rangers legends, but no, the Jambos are into the algorithms now, aren't they? They're some say the Rangers and Celtic are grand at the Timecast, so boys have statistically the third biggest support in Scotland, but the per capita trophy tally is underperforming at the moment for that, according to the software that they've put into the. So and Barry has said absolutely beautifully that he is not in any way interested in being manager anywhere else other than Ibrox. It's Rangers, it's Rangers, it's Rangers for he. If the job's no Ibrox, shove it up your brunty. So that the kind of light and dark contrast, though, can be beneficial. I think it can actually turn beneficial. This, oh my God, Europe's amazing. We've been brilliant in Europe. Oh my God, we're absolutely terrible domestically. As a great European scalp was achieved by Barry Ferguson when he beat Fenerbahce and he beat Jose Mourinho, and he's a few good domestic away wins. That led to a lot of Bears demanding to get the job full time. A lot of Blue Noses saying, Barry, that's it. He should, hands down, he's a Rangers man. He should get the job full time. He's doing the business. I was never one of those. But as I explained in Saturday, this doesn't mean he isn't the perfect interim gaffer just now, but he's doing no better or worse than Clermont, really. I mean, Clermont lost his last two games, home and away, to St Mirren. Barry's got a draw. That's his only game against St Mirren, so we can't actually slag him too much. I certainly should be slagging the players, but he's a great change from Clermont. Is what I was saying on Saturday. He's doing it a different way. He's achieving the same kind of unconvincing results, unconvincing levels. Clermont was winning all his games at Ibrox bar a one each draw with Dundee United up until we lost to Queen's Park. It was a cataclysmic result. He really started not winning at Ibrox in a major way, but nobody was convinced, even though Clermont had won like Hampden, Ibrox, all his home games domestically. Obviously, just win a lot of them. There was a draw with Dundee United November last year. That was it. Other than that, it was just all wins right up until February, whereas Barry's can't win at Ibrox. he's just losing all his games at Ibrox. He had the draw with Athletic Club in Europe. He's last out in the Ibrox, but he was winning all his away games. He was Kilmarnock and Dundee, Parkhead, and he started drawing away from home. Hope that means he's going to start winning at Ibrox, but it's amounting to the same thing that Clermont suddenly couldn't. He was starting to win away from home just as he started going off a cliff at Ibrox, which ended up costing him the job. So I don't think there's any great difference in what they're actually achieving. Now, Clermont's got us to that 8th place finish in the Europa League group stages. Barry's got us into the quarter final from winning that massive last 16 game with Fenerbahce. So I don't think there's any great difference in what they've actually achieved. It's just different. It's just been done in a different way, and their complaints as supporters are different. And I think that's now the players seem to be letting Barry down just as much as they consistently let Clermont down. We'll realise that the manager's playing background, or his family background, his football loyalties, he was growing up, isn't as vital to finding the best Rangers manager as his ability to do the job of being a football manager. When we're finding this out just in time as the the takeover by 49ers Enterprises, Parag Marath, Andrew Kavanagh is obviously looking. We've got our sporting director appointed. We're obviously looking at appointing our full-time manager for next season. I think it's just as well that we've realised that now. We'll let a real Rangers man should get the job. That we're performing just badly enough domestically to cool that down. Barry unfortunately should not do. He should not do at this time of year when the light doesn't change before to after the game. It's as light after the game as it is before the game, particularly at St Mirren. You shouldn't do your pre-match interview and your post-match interview with Rangers TV in the same spot, because when it gets to Monday and I realise I haven't seen either of them and I watch them one after the other, he's just standing at exactly the same spot. It looks like exactly the same weather, exactly the same moment in time, and he's standing there going, players have got to go out there and get a hold of the game, win the battle. I'm sure we want to win all 5 of our post-split fixtures. And then it just seems to cut and watch the next video. He's just carried on the same interview to go, that wasn't good enough. The players don't listen to instruction. If they keep playing like that, they're not going to pick up any more points towards the end of the season. I'm really embarrassed at that. It's bad. But I think these little doubts will let us, thank Barry for his services. And just in time for the summer entering, we can start thinking that we do want to have the 24-year-old dry Bundesliga guru coach whose playing career was cut short by a skiing accident in the Schwarzwälder when he was 18 years old. He did a skiing accident in the Black Forest. He skis through trees because that's how he works out how to beat defences. There's a forest of defenders and he's just so into his stats and his tactics and his strategies. That's what he does. He goes skiing in the Black Forest. I mean, he's got that team for the Baden-Württemberg amateur leagues to the cusp of the last 32 of the German Cup. The guy's an absolute guru. We can get that kind of manager in now, and people just be like, right, okay, let's go algorithms, let's go stats, let's whatever it takes. It's nothing to do with the manager's background. It's just all to do with his ability to make Rangers brilliant. I was also wrong last week, and in many things, and most things I do in life, I'm wrong, but I thought I'd covered all the stats. I mentioned the fact that we hadn't won a match in April. That was one I was really chuffed with that. I mentioned that 2 or 3 times. I went a bit OTT with that during the course of the pod. That means we haven't won a match in the calendar month of April 2025. We haven't won a match for the whole of April. Do you realise that? We haven't won it. I thought that was quite good, and I was doing the whole stuff about we keep conceding exactly 2 goals a game under Barry. I know we had 3 goals lost against Dundee, but we only lost 1 goal away to Fenerbahce. That kept the average at exactly 2. We've drawn 0-0 with Athletic Club at Ibrox, so that means to keep the average at exactly 2, goals conceded per game under Barry, we need to lose 4. We need to concede 4 goals to somebody, kind of soon. So, just reasons to be worried. But I was talking about how I thought I'd had all the, and that was our first point, a 9 against St Mirren, but I thought I had all the stats covered. And then I watched, it was at Rangers Review. Joshua Barry, the coldest, hardest stat of the lot. He says that was Rangers, the 14th game out of the 34 they've played in the league so far this season. That's the 14th game in which they have dropped points. They've dropped points in 14 of our 34 games so far. It means they've won 20 games, but I thought that is harsh. That is a brilliantly exposing stat, a kind of ruthless stat that tells you just what kind of state we're in domestically. But it also, similarly, I go straight to, well, we've won 20 games versus it doesn't matter how many of those 14 that we've actually lost. We've won 20 because 1985, 1986, people think Walter Smith's debut as Rangers manager was at Love Street, the 20th of April 1991. His debut as Rangers manager in his own right, and Sandy Robertson scores the only goal of the game. We win 1-0 at a packed Love Street in the sunshine. Things are going to go a bit wrong when we go to Fir Park, but we win the title anyways. He's just taken over from Graham Souness, as Walter. But of course, that was his second debut as Rangers manager, so to speak, strictly speaking. Although he was assistant manager, Souness was still completing his contract at Sampdoria. When he was announced as manager and he selected Walter Smith, he brought Walter Smith in as an assistant. So Walter was the only kind of member of the new management team in the dugout, and his debut was the 19th of April 1986. That day we beat St Mirren. Sorry, we get beat 2-1 by St Mirren at Love Street. Ali Dawson scoring their only goal. And Walter Smith was in the dugout. He'd taken the team that day, and he took them again the following. I don't know who it was we played the following. I think it might have been a draw before Souness turned up for the last home game of the season, whereas we beat Motherwell 2-0 just to make sure we get into Europe. And then the following week we beat Celtic in the Glasgow Cup final, and the following season we won the league. But it was making me think about that, because that day Walter Smith is in the dugout and we lose to St Mirren. I don't know if that was our last loss of that season, but that's the only season in Rangers League history, or only season in history playing in any league, that we have lost more games than we won. We lost more games than we won that season. I've got this written down somewhere because I knew I'd have to try and remember it. We lost 15 games and we won 14. 7 draws, the old 36 team. 36 games, 10 team. Premier Division. We lost 15 in 1985-1986 season, and we only won 14. Only time in our history, and of course I was at most of them, wasn't I? That's probably where I started getting the idea that I was a jinx and Rangers would do better if we weren't there. And there's that whole thing of what we're talking about on Saturday. If Rangers had lost to St Mirren on Saturday, that would be the first time since 79-80 that we lost 3 times to St Mirren in a season, and they beat us home and away 2-1. 2-1 at Love Street and 2-1 at Ibrox that season as well, the same as he already had by Saturday just past game, but that I think was the last game of the season in 1979-80 season, and they beat us 4-1 at Love Street in the last game of the season. We then went to the Scottish Cup final and lost that to a deflection in extra time. I remember watching that, and the television didn't qualify for Europe and the Anglo-Scottish Cup. Chesterfield beat us, blah blah blah. But the following season, 80-81 season, we St Mirren finished third that season, and we finished fifth in 79-80. The following season, we pushed them into fourth. We finished third on goal difference, the same points as St Mirren the following season. But I think the idea, I'm saying I don't want any Rangers. On Saturday, I was just feeling as if just get rid of everybody. I don't care if none of these players are here next season. Clear out a lot of them. And I was, although I was being a lot nicer about Barry, I was kind of including him in that. The idea that this is our worst team ever. It is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. There were a few players that won the Cup Winners' Cup and that involved with us in 79-80, but for Rangers to be finishing fifth in the top flight, especially when only consisted of 10 teams, was pretty awful, pretty embarrassing. So I wouldn't worry too much about the league form after the arse has fallen out this season, after the season is effectively over, except for the fact, of course, that my thinking was this team, the one good thing about it, they like it when they're not under pressure. Maybe the other team are favourites, as in Europe, why we perform so well in Europe with this collection of players. I mean, we have them for a few years now. I thought that would be translate into, well, if Celtic have actually won the league pre-kick-off, as they had on Saturday there, before we even kicked off at Paisley, all pressure is off this team. I thought they'd get there and they'd cut loose and they'd be great against St Mirren. But they were still crap, even though there's nothing officially left to play for. Technically, I think if we'd lost and Aberdeen or Hibs maybe had won, we could still technically finish third. We could be caught in second place, but really, that is a slight worry, it has to be said. But I think if we're going to describe this season, whether it's in lighter shades or black, it's no an Annus Horribilis. It's no an Annus Mirabilis. An Annus Horribilis domestically, it's an Annus Mirabilis in terms of Europe. But I think overall it's Annus Michael Laudrup 1982. It's a 1992 Michael Laudrup's Annus. I mean, that's the best way to describe this Rangers. Michael Laudrup in 1992, he's playing for Barcelona, Johan Cruyff's Barcelona dream team. Already got a couple of La Liga titles under his belt. He's won Serie A with Juventus as well, all these caps for Denmark. Pretty much a world star, and he plays at Wembley in the first Barcelona team ever to be champions of Europe. At this point in time, 1992, Real Madrid have won the European Cup 6 times. They're the only Spanish team to have won the European Cup. Barcelona have never won it. This is their third attempt. They lost the final in 61 when they were massive favourites. Lost the final in Bern to Benfica. And then in 1986, they played in the final in Seville, and they lose on penalties. So it was the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan as well, but they're playing in Spain, against Stoy Bucharest. They're still under the Ceausescu's Romania. There's almost zero Romanian fans in the stadium that night, and there's like 60,000 Barcelona fans, and they don't even score in the penalty shootout. They don't score a single penalty, and they get beat because they just can't take the pressure. They've got to start on the biggest rivalry in football. Real Madrid have been, at that point in time, still just ahead of Milan. They'd won the European Cup more than anybody else. Come 1992, Barcelona don't even have one to their name. And of course they win on the night, the Ronald Koeman goal, the famous free kick. It's the last European Cup, so it's the Champions League starts the following season. But Michael Laudrup is part of that Barcelona team. He's won the European Cup. He's won the best trophy there is in club football. But like the next month, weeks later, that summer, his brother wins the European Championships with Denmark, but Michael Laudrup has fallen out with Richard Moller Nielsen, the Denmark manager, and it must have been devastating. It must have been, as his country won their first ever major honour. And he'd been there for a few years. He's part of the Denmark arriving on the scene big time after they turned professional, the Danes. Danish Dynamite and all that, and for Michael Laudrup. Now, who knows, maybe if Michael Laudrup had played for Richard Moller-Nielsen's team, just tactically it would have imbalanced them, but you can't think how we would have made it who could have made any team any worse, Michael Laudrup. So Denmark win the Euros and he's not there. It should have been, it must have been gutting. You've just got the biggest success of your career and then you see that you could have had one even bigger, and it just he's done the thing of being part of a team that appeased a nation almost. Catalonia just desperate to have a European Cup, massive footballing body that is Barcelona, and he gets it. He's part of the end of that drought. But Denmark, living the dream, we Denmark, suddenly just the whole country can celebrate becoming champions of Europe completely unexpectedly. Of course, Yugoslavia had got disqualified, so Denmark had only got a few weeks' notice to turn up at the Euros. It's the biggest shock in international football history until Greece won the thing in 2004. But it was one of the biggest shocks in international football history. Let's not get into that. But Michael Laudrup must be. It should have been the same as the Koemans. I mean, he's part of the Barcelona team that wins the European Cup in '92 at Wembley because the three foreigner rule. But Romario hasn't arrived yet. So it's him, Stoichkov and Ronald Koeman are the three foreigners that get picked for Barcelona. That night he plays the whole game, extra time and all. Momentous evening. He should have been doing the same as Ronald Koeman, who scored his teammate that night, who scored the goal 4 years previously when Ronald Koeman won the European Cup with PSV Eindhoven. This was Koeman winning it with two different teams. He wins the European Cup with PSV Eindhoven 4 years previously in Stuttgart in West Germany. And 2 weeks before, his brother, Erwin Koeman, had won the Cup Winners' Cup playing for KV Mechelen of Belgium. He played in Belgium. He plays for KV Mechelen. They beat Ajax, a Dutch team, in the final of the Cup Winners' Cup. So that's one. That's a funny one for Ronald Koeman. He's loving that as a big PSV man. But he then wins the European Cup the following week. And then a few weeks later, the two of them are in the Netherlands team that wins the Euros back in West Germany. And the Volkspark Stadion in Stuttgart, which features a lot in these pods, was, I think that might be the only stadium they didn't play in, the Dutch team that summer. But they're brothers winning the Euros together, and 4 years later, they'd already, they'd won the Cup Winners' Cup and the European Cup between them. Mr. and Mrs. Koeman, their mum and dad are going, this is fantastic. Our boys are just winning everything. They're sweeping all Europe. The Netherlands, first Euros. And then 4 years later, we went from the Dutch to the Danes, and the Laudrup brothers kind of do the same as the Koeman brothers, because Michael was in a huff with Richard Moller-Nielsen. I mean, 2 years later, the two of them miss out in the 1994 Champions League final. Still, for me, my favourite ever performance by a football team that I don't support. It was Milan that night against, for all sorts of reasons. But Brian Laudrup gets dropped. Savicevic, Desai, and Boban. Boban. That's the three foreigners that Milan went with that night. And Romario and Stoichkov and Koeman are the three foreigners for Barcelona. So both the Laudrup brothers get dropped that night. Michael Laudrup dropped by Barcelona, and Brian Laudrup is dropped by Milan for that game. I think Richard Moller-Nielsen phoned them. He phoned Brian before the game, and he was like, "Oh, Brian, that's terrible. You've been dropped, mate. Oh, mate, they'll miss you. I'm really sorry to see that. I'm sorry to see that. I'm sure." And then he phones Michael. "All right, Michael, missing out again, pal. Yeah, that'll teach you." So it's quite an interesting thing. But I think that's the season Rangers have had. It's a bit like how Michael Laudrup must have felt over those few months in 1992. I know Annus doesn't mean season, but give me a break here. It's just absolutely fantastic in one respect, and a bit of a slap in the face in another respect. It's just all about distractions now, isn't it? Is it Liam Kelly? His post-match reaction was quite good. He was absolutely beeling at Paisley, even though he made a couple of mistakes himself. He seemed to kind of write them off, as to be said, in his post-match interview. But he's taking responsibility, and he's talking to the rest of the players. We're just not doing what we're told. We just don't listen, which is famously or infamously what Barry's shouted, and he had it thrown back at him in the post-match press conference by one of the journalists there, that you were seen to be saying, you just don't listen. Just don't listen to your players. Is that the problem? And Barry's now got to make sure they they do listen. What have we got to distract us? Player of the Year awards were on Sunday night. It's a bit like the talk of James Tavernier's testimonial always gets that kind of, not abandon it, don't, no, let's no bother, let's just scrap the whole thing. Of course they should. The Player of the Year awards should have gone ahead. No, it's the Rangers Player of the Year awards I'm talking about here. In-house Player of the Year stuff is like testimonials for supporters. It's another a symptom of that kind of, we only support Rangers if they're winning kind of thing. Like I was doing on Saturday night. And I was raging with that draw at Paisley. But you have to have spaces and moments where you simply love your club irrespective of results. Celtic winning loads of trophies hasn't made me feel like I want to go and support Celtic. It's actually made my love for Rangers even deeper. So I think we need moments to celebrate ourselves, to remind ourselves what we're all about, not just be I mean, results are the major thing in a football team's existence, but more than a club and all that, you need to have your little moments of in-house celebration. Nico Raskin got the Player of the Year award. I think, why not? Having said all that, it's kind of up for grabs. Really, it doesn't really matter who got it. All much of a muchness. No, Nico Raskin, I think when he is good, he's more noticeable and more of a leader than Cherny. Václav Cherny for me is probably my Player of the Year, just because he's managed to consistently produce 7 to 8 out of 10. He just goes out and just performs at a certain level until he's tired. He's had games where he's been posted missing as well, but the assists and the goals he's scored, Cherny in a pretty poor team, and his contribution in Europe as well, and particularly, it's been fantastic. But it's not been blow you away kind of stuff, because I don't think this team would allow it to be either. Raskin, when he's good, he's sensational in a really noticeable way, and when he's not, you just don't notice him at all, to the point where you can't criticise him because you forgot he's playing. So I think his performances are more variable. Cherny's are more of a consistent level. But I can't say I'm not going to be getting too upset about it. Nico Raskin got the Player of the Year. His celebrations after his goal on Saturday at Paisley, I watched it back again, and there's Igamane is up kind of slapping him in the chest and all that, and dunting him and telling him, go on, enjoy it. When he put his 2-1 up, he seems kind of frustrated, Raskin. And I wonder, is that because he made a complete rick? He was part of the real problem when St Mirren scored their goal to go to their equaliser, their first equaliser, when they made it 1 each at the start of the second half. Raskin wasn't picking up Mark O'Hara. Is he still raging because of that, or because he put in a man of the match performance for Rangers? He was our least bad player on Saturday. Is he, exaggerating that to the point where, oh my God, these guys are letting me down? He's raging at his teammates. I don't know. It was a strange thing, but I don't expect to see Nico Raskin at Ibrox next season. So we'll send him away with a Player of the Year award. Igamane got the Young Player of the Year. Yeah, I would agree with that. His goal versus Celtic got the goal of the season. I think that's a bit sad that gets the goal of the season. It's a winner against Celtic at Parkhead. Yeah, okay. And it was a fantastic finish, a lovely finish, but the goal was, it's a good kick out, and Dessers is holding off Celtic. He's getting in the way of Celtic defenders, who basically 2 of them in a row kind of fall down. One judges the bounce really badly. Dessers helps with that. Another one just falls in his arse, and next thing, Igamane's on go. I mean, still got a hell of a lot to do. And it's a tremendous finish, and it's our biggest rivals, and it's at their home place, and it was great fun. But I think the second, if you wanted, you can stick with that game. You can stick with that result, and it's the second goal that day that Diamande scores. From the moment Yilmaz goes in and steals the ball off Celtic, steaming in there on a 30-yard run to steal the ball off Celtic in their own half, and we'll work the ball, but in it. Suter puts it to Tav, a brilliant ball for Tav, the flick on the backward header from Raskin, and the finish from Diamande. Again, he does deceptively great finishes, Diamande. That goal he scored against Nice in the south of France, you need to watch that again in slow motion to see just how genius the finish is. It looks like a scrappy goal at the time, and that looks like a straightforward finish against, but his connection's perfect. His placement in that ball is absolutely perfect, and the celebrations were great as well. Him and Raskin jumping up towards each other like a pair of salmon coming out the water, not using their hands to jump. It was quite good. I felt as if that was the best goal we've scored this season. There's probably other ones that I've forgotten about. But I think a combination of the actual goal itself and the occasion and the opponents, the kind of sliding scale, that was an absolute cracker. I thought to put us 2-0 up against Celtic at Parkhead that day. Also, it was just a goal where we were working really hard, which is the thing we're accused of not doing in league games. We just worked really hard and were much more alert than Celtic, and we wanted it more, and then we just got super skillful as well in a really dramatic, exciting way. So that was my goal of the season, but no harm giving it to Igamane, who I would say is probably the one player. He's not our best player, Hamza Igamane, but I'm just really interested to see how he gets on. I know he's 22, which also Igamane, of course, getting nominated for the PFA Young Player of the Year. He's our only nomination in the men's PFA nominations that come out on Monday. We don't have anybody for the Player of the Year. I would give that to. I would just give that to Simon Murray of Dundee, obviously, because he's the only non-Celtic player in there. But I would give the big one to Simon Murray. I mean, was it 33 years old and 20 odd goals he scored this season? He always seems to be scoring against us. He always, every time I turn on the highlights of Scottish football, sports, whatever, Simon Murray seems to be scoring for Dundee. He scored the winner against Hearts at Tynecastle the other day, getting them out a team that's in a relegation struggle for most of the season. The number of goals he scores is absolutely phenomenal. A guy that clearly works his socks off, and he loves Dundee as well, Simon Murray. So I would definitely give it to him. I think it's a cheap, easy, kind of lazy decision to give it to anybody else other than Simon Murray, the PFA Player of the Year. We don't have a single nomination. That is absolutely disgraceful. Igamane, the Young Player of the Year PFA award, is up against James Wilson of Hearts, Lennon Miller of Motherwell, and Arne Engels, the Vice Engel, Arne Engels of. That's a sick joke. It's a film reference. Let's just call it a film reference. Arne Engels of Celtic. So I know Lennon Miller, really young man, got a Scotland cap. So did James Wilson, really young guy. Maybe they deserve it more than Igamane. Engels obviously is a league champion, probably going to win the treble. But I don't see Igamane winning that one. 22 years old. It's not 23 to November, but it seems, I don't know what the cut-off is for being a young player of the year. I'm quite interested in seeing. I'm not bothered about anybody leaving next season, including Tav. As much as I love Tav, I'm not bothered about who leaves next season, except I'm really interested in seeing Igamane. I think he's somebody we could base the team around. I'm being delusional about that, obviously, but I feel as if he's like a fitter, more focused Alfredo Morelos. He's got that kind of bouncy, coming from puppy fat a lot of time, kind of bouncy, vibrant nature about him. He's been played in the wrong position this season. As a young man, it's his first time playing abroad, and it's a completely different culture in Europe to what it is in Morocco. So I think he's done really well, and I think he's all out, just an exciting prospect. The other player I'm really be kind of gutted, just from a really almost a kind of anal point of view. If he leaves, it's Jefte. Hefte's his distribution of the ball, his shooting, his crossing is woeful at times. His concentration could be woeful at times as well. But I just feel as if there's a proper footballer in there. There's something about Jefte. I want to see him under another manager, who maybe understands him better and also with a year's experience. He's probably going to get picked up by something. I think we would take offers for Jefte. He's done enough to, attract. Brazilians always do, to attract a move, and he's got no reason, I would imagine, to be staying in Scotland. But I would love to see how Jefte develops, just out of sheer interest. It's almost like I don't support Rangers. Is that guy going to get any better? I think there is a player in there. He's got a lot of talents, but doesn't seem to know how to use them. Listen, this idea that there's nothing to play for on Sunday is absolute bollocks. That's one thing I was reminded about watching us being so awful at Paisley the other day. Is even if you're writing off the season, the results. So even if you're looking forward to what's going to happen with a takeover, who's going to come in as manager, who are we going to sign next season, how much money are we going to get, financial fair play, all that kind of nonsense. The results at the fag end of a dead domestic season still really matter. I was wanting two things for Barry. I was wanting him to avoid two things in this interimship. I wanted him not to get hammered in Europe. I thought there's a good chance he could get stuffed off Mourinho, the athletic club, who are flying high in a massive league. No, we went out of Europe, but he did not get stuffed in any way. In fact, a credit to himself in the first leg of both of those ties. In all the legs of both those ties. And the other thing I was worried about was Celtic winning the league at Ibrox. If Celtic win the league at Ibrox on Barry's watch, that's unfair on Barry. I know life's no fair, and football's not about fairness, but I didn't want that for Barry. It's from to come in just to be in charge for that happening. It's particularly as we keep beating Celtic in the league, and then they keep slipping up against other teams just when they should be winning the league. I was actually worried when we scored that equaliser, as funny as it was at Pittodrie. I thought, we just teeing this up for Celtic to win the league at Ibrox. That now can't happen. My two biggest fears for him can't happen, but I don't want Celtic coming to Ibrox and kind of starting to pretend that they won the league at Ibrox. I don't want them coming to Ibrox to celebrate having won the league last week with a big performance at Ibrox. It's, as I said before, Barry's conceded exactly 2 goals a game for, I think it's about maybe 7 of the 11 games he's been in charge, and it would work out an exact average of 2 goals conceded per game if we were to lose 4 goals to Celtic at Ibrox on Saturday. Now they've got on Sunday. They've got the pressure of sealing the league title is off them now. They'll be bailing because they haven't beaten us the last two. We've beaten them at home and away the last 2 times we've played them in the league. Obviously, the Cherny scushing their fans with water kind of thing, that caused a lot of upset, I would imagine. The Rodgers will hate the fact that we've beaten them the last couple of times we've played them. It's 3 games in a row, 3 different venues. We've scored 3 goals against Celtic, and we lost the League Cup final in penalties. But the SFA had to come out and apologise about a very, very important decision in extra time that should have gone our way. So, we lost the game. That's all there is to it. I don't really take that game as a defeat either, to be honest. We've played really well. Our last 3 games against Celtic, scoring 3 goals against them in each of those games. I feel as if Celtic will be up for this. I think they really want to rub it in and start. They've got a bit of a breather. They still have a Scottish Cup final coming up. Their players will be wanting to keep the pace up so they can get selected for that. But also, I think it's soon enough after their title party for them to still be buzzing rather than getting a bit lax, and they'll see this as a way to properly celebrate winning the title, is to go to Ibrox and give us. I don't think if we're not on it, it won't be a case of they'll just beat us. I think they'll give us a bit of a scalping. Insiala, that's 3 different goals he's been bullied off the ball for at St Mirren this season, and we're struggling for centre halves. Proper, he's had 2. I think he get bullied off the ball the game we beat St Mirren this season for St Mirren's opener that day. We come back to beat them 2-1. Olasanya gave him a terrible time. I don't know if he was directly responsible. I can't remember if he was directly responsible for any of the goals when we lost to St Mirren in Paisley at the festive period. But I think he definitely didn't help us when he come on to replace Balogun that day. So we can be really weak at the back. John Souttar's allowed. He's a mistake in him every game. Well, I hope he had 3 mistakes and Saturday, so I hope that's him. Got them all out of system for Celtic. Celtic coming to town, but I don't like we don't like to overreact. We're prone to overreacting as a fan base when things go badly, and I fight against that. But this is a team who have undeniably gone on a record run of home games without a win, losing most of them. Holding Athletic Club to a 0-0 with 10, then 9 men. It seems like a perfectly poetic end to that, non-winning run at Ibrox that started with Queen's Park beating us with their only shot on target, their only shot on goal. So it'd be quite poetic if that was the end to it. But I do into a psyched Celtic team would take it to new levels of humiliation. These players, they need to enjoy Sunday. Our players, because I think the second they get a whiff of responsibility or any onus being on them, they just totally disappear. Did you watch Liverpool winning the league, winning the English title on Sunday as the bottles of wine were not wearing off? They're still in full effect, really, to be honest with you. I was sitting there kind of half pissed, and I was starting to think I was a teenager again, not just because of the drink that I'd fired into myself the night before. It was my teenage years. I remember I grew up with Liverpool winning the league, more seasons than not. There was the talk, the Sky anchors, the Sky presentation team were talking about how they'd spoken to a 41-year-old Liverpool fan who said he couldn't remember he couldn't remember Liverpool having won the league at Anfield in front of a crowd. Obviously, they won it in 2020, but there was, because of COVID, the grounds were empty by the time they actually sealed the title in 2020, Liverpool, and that was their first for 30 years. I thought it was quite interesting. I thought Anfield was a kind of roided up version of itself. You know, it's still intimate. It was quite weird to see it like that. Because I remember as soon as chucking the old championship trophy, tossing it through the air casually to Phil Neal, you know, who just take the captaincy of, there you have that. So, right, because almost like we win it so easily, we don't really give a monkeys. And I went to Anfield just before they seated the Kop, just to see I'd stood on the Kop. The first time I went, I've been a few times. No Liverpool supporter or anything like that. It's just easy to get to for certain big games. But it was really small. I was taking it. My sister and I were both like, it's really quite wee in it. And that's the whole point. Anfield, it's intimate, but now it's got that thing. I went again when the Anfield Road had a second tier on it. It was all seated, but they got the second tier on it. But I've not been back, and the new main stand was getting built behind the old main stand when I was there. 2015-16, so we're playing Bordeaux in the Europa League. In fact, it'd be 2015-16 season because they lost the final to Sevilla. But it was starting to get that kind of scaled up version, and now they're up there like the 60,000, which you need to get as a capacity now if you want to be a big battler in the English top flight. But it was quite weird. It's retained that intimacy, but now it's got scale as well. Anfield, and I thought the Anfield Road stand in the sun, everybody waving their scarves, you'll never walk alone, and all that. I thought that actually was more dramatic than the Kop. You know, the Kop's because it's stayed the same way as has the centenary stand there at Anfield. But I thought it was really interesting to see how Liverpool have just, despite their ownership and that completely changing, a lot of their morals changing, they've retained enough of their essence to, you wouldn't even know it was a 60,000 capacity stadium until you saw certain angles and you thought, that's why Man United are going up to 100,000. Peter Drury, he likes to gush, doesn't he? Peter Drury, he was commentator. I actually took a note of what he said at the start of the game. 5 years since cruel circumstance so compromised their outpouring of joy. 35 years since the great Alan Hansen led out Liverpool last to seal the title in front of their own. A palpable, universal yearning to celebrate. That was kick-off. That was him just taking centre at the start of the game. Thank God Spurs scored first, or Peter Drury would have dehydrated himself to death with the amount of gushing he was doing. Sunshine and champagne, one of the goals. How many Bon Mots has this guy got up his sleeves? But I'm not for a second slagging Peter Drury, because they won't need passports, they won't need visas. Manchester, prepare yourself. Rangers are coming. It's absolutely brilliant. It's etched on all our blue brains. Peter Drury's gushing about us, his very generous gushing about us, giving us a level of praise and appreciation during our run to the 2008 UEFA Cup final on ITV. Was it 2 or ITV 4 that we weren't getting on STV? Archie and stuff like that. It was absolutely miserable stuff, but it was good. But it's not just about his gushing and all that. He's got the stats, he's got the facts, Peter Drury, and I was a bit towards the end. I don't know if you remember it, if you were watching them beating Spurs 5-1 to win the title, or to seal the title, Liverpool. When he was talking about the fact this was Liverpool sealing their 20th championship of England, the 20th time they'd been champions of England, which was drawing them level with Manchester United's record of 20. But that record, of course, was changing hands for over 100 years. It's a bit like Liverpool. The 2020s have become. This was just to stop them being Airdrie of the 1920s. But always right up there, just always right up there, challenging, but never quite again. I know they won it in 2020. I know you could say the same about us, but we won it in 2021, our title. But he was talking about by the time Manchester United won their first title, I think it was 1908, that was like 4 years after Liverpool's second. So that was 2-1 to Liverpool already by the time Manchester United won a title. But a few years later, Man United made it 2 each, like the 1910s, 1911s or something like that. You get to like 1965 and Man U win it to make it 6 each between Liverpool and already the two teams that won it the most, I think. Would have been Herbert Chapman's Arsenal had the 3 in a row. Huddersfield did 3, but Huddersfield never won any more than 3. I think they'd already be the two top title winning clubs in England at that point in time, and it was like 66 Liverpool made it 7-6, and 67 Man U made it 7 each. in titles, but Man U didn't win it for another, over a quarter of a century. So by the time Liverpool won the title in 1990, because they were just, 70s, 80s, and then 1990, that was the last time they won the title before Klopp arrived. But at that point in time, they made it 18-7. Liverpool were ahead 18-7, and it was like, there's lots of banners and that going about that get remembered by the other side. But they were saying, you'll never catch us. That's it. Man United thinking, we'll never. They grew up just watching Liverpool eviscerating all their records. And but then Man United come back. Then Ferguson comes in 1993. He wins his first title as Man United manager. And by the time Alex Ferguson is finished 20 years later, 2013, it's 2018 to Manchester United. Man United equal Liverpool's record, then they go in front of it, then they go in front of it again. 2013, last time Man U won the league. That's the thing, though. That's both sides of it. It's like a generational thing. It seems it'll never. That you've just got so far ahead. You've been winning so often for so long that it's inconceivable it'll ever stop. But it does. Celtic just now are only doing to us what we did to them, and for most of the 20s, most of the 30s, for the 40s, for the 50s, right up to the mid 60s. The 1990s as well. We just have, and it seems like Celtic have been winning for ages and been winning so much, but it does change. The pattern is set. We are far too big for it not to be. We're far too big for people not to be interested in buying us over and keeping that record going. That's why Real Madrid consistently. Real Madrid are almost as big as the San Francisco 49ers. They've only got a few million less. Because their history is there. Those first 5 European Cups can't be taken away. That's what took the legacy to a level that just, every now and then they'll go through bad periods, but they'll get back there. They'll always be the team that's won the European Cup or the Champions League most times. Rangers, I remember when Liverpool were dominating down south, Manchester United every now and then would get a good win at Anfield. And then I lived to see the whole Man United dominance under Sir Alex Ferguson, but Liverpool would go, and every now and then they'd have a good win at Old Trafford. It's just a wee marker, all through our 9 in a row years. Celtic had good results at Ibrox. No, they won the odd game. Remember Lou Macari's debut as manager. Crap manager for Celtic, but they won the league. Yeah, so he won that game. He won his debut. It was against we won the league, but he won his debut. I think it was October or something. It was at Ibrox. It was a great night for Celtic, a great week for them or whatever. But it was also a reminder for us that you need to keep Celtic. And Celtic need to know the same about us. We've already beaten them at Parkhead and Ibrox this season. Just a wee marker, just to say, you're winning the league just now, but we will be back. We're always going to be the team that knows most about how to beat you. And I think that's what we have to do on Sunday to make sure that Celtic are just reminded again that we will be coming to get them next season. There's something else I had to say to you that is very, very important. Stuff, Guard of Honour for Celtic. Like I say, I think it's like Player of the Year awards, and testimonials, and things like that. When Rangers fans are saying our team don't deserve to have them. I think a Guard of Honour as well. It's another one of those things that tells you more about yourself as a club. It's not really about the opposition. It's about your standing, your class. Do you have the class to do that? It's all about your self-respect. No, don't. Because Peter Lawwell's Celtic have been absolute bastards over the years, showing us no respect whatsoever. So fuck that shit. I would like to be in a situation where Rangers could do that, give Celtic the Guard of Honour on Sunday, and maybe they will. Maybe Rangers and Barry Ferguson have got more class than me, but I would like new managers. It's all that kind of nonsense is starting just now. Marco Rosa. I mean, he's born in Leipzig. Next season's Conference League final is at the RB Leipzig stadium. So he was sacked by RB Leipzig. He's also the Dortmund manager when we pumped him in the Europa League. So I don't know how that works out, but he did then beat Eintracht Frankfurt in a cup final the following seasons. I don't know. It's the whole kind of RB involvement. Leeds, doing their thing last night, celebrating their promotion, like gubbing Bristol City, and they've got the Red Bull. I was noticing that last night. They're sponsored by Red Bull. What else are we talking about? Daniel Farke, the Leeds manager, who's very good at winning the championship, going to become a bit of a Malky Mackay player and manager. Malky Mackay was hardly allowed to leave the championship. Nobody believed in him as a Premiership player or manager, but he just kept doing the business. in the Championship. Get you promoted? Oh, I've been sold, and that kind of thing. I don't know if Daniel Farker's done the same thing with Norwich. That he's managed with Leeds this season. There's a big rumour going around that he ain't going to go up into the Premier League with Leeds, but I don't know. It would be wanting him at Ibrox. He doesn't have much of a European record, so I am not really interested in that. It's just tonight, European football. I'm going to watch Arsenal against PSG. 60 clubs, 65 clubs. 65 clubs have won European trophies. The current, the modern understanding of European club competition, 65 different clubs have won a European competition. Another 40 clubs have reached the final of European competition without winning anything. In this season, this next couple of weeks, Bodo Glimt, Real Betis or Djurgardens could join that list of 105 different clubs that have played in a European final. Really interesting stuff. Barcelona and Arsenal could meet for a second Champions League final. They met in 2006 in Paris, so here they could be meeting again if the semi-finals go right in the next couple of weeks. PSG could finally win the Champions League. The European Cup could finally become Champions Europe. Lost the final in 2020, won the Cup Winners' Cup in 96 and lost the final again in 97. But finally, the thing they've been throwing the money at, they could maybe win that. It's Spurs, after taking a 5-1 down at Anfield, they could still end up equaling Liverpool's. They go joint top with Liverpool as Britain's most successful Europa League UEFA Cup team. Because Liverpool have won it 3 times and lost the final. Well, Spurs have won it 72. They won the first UEFA Cup. They won it again in 84, and they lost the final in 74. So Spurs could go out there and if they win it this season. And the better problem on Thursday night, the Europa League semi-finals, Spurs, Man United, Lyon, Bodo Glimt is the only side, and the Rangers haven't played this season. The only one there's any kind of interest in for us. We've seen the rest of them. So it's all kind of boring. Really, I've always thought that I had a massive interest in European football, European club football, and these are the things we could be looking for. This, and it just doesn't matter, does it? Because it's not involving Rangers. My massive interest in European football has always been my desperation to see Rangers doing the business in Europe, and it's we're no longer involved this week. I will come back to you, as I say, on Friday, perhaps, with an update in the team if I'm not heading down to York, folks. But you obviously you just don't listen. You just don't listen, do you? Because you keep watching the pod, so you obviously can't be listening to my crap patter. But I'll try and be back with some team news before I nip off down to York on Saturday, and hopefully I'm giving you more details about the Old Firm game on Sunday than my trip to York to see Gary Oldman. Enjoy the rest of your week trips, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks.